I'm Chad Van Horn. I'm a bankruptcy attorney with over 15 years experience, have filed thousands of cases and board certified in consumer and business bankruptcy. And today I'm going to answer some of the most common questions that I get regarding Chapter 7 and Chapter 13 bankruptcy. So if you're struggling with debt, this video is for you. So let's first start with Chapter 13 bankruptcy and what happens if you file for Chapter 13. Well, a couple things happen. First, you're going to get into a repayment plan with a person called a trustee. The trustee is a government-appointed person that you're going to make payments to every month based on a budget that we put together. The budget is determined by the last 6 months of income and expenses, and it does look at household income and expenses. So if you're married, if you have roommates, if you have other people in there, it's going to take that into consideration. Also, there's other benefits to Chapter 13, like dealing with secured debt. So if you're behind on your HOA dues, your mortgage, your car payment, it can get you caught up, and in some situations, it can actually reduce your payment on the secured debt. Also, if you have IRS debt, it'll allow you to pay that IRS debt over the length of the plan. Normal plans are 36 to 60 months, so it's a 3 to 5 year plan, and at the end of that plan, you receive a discharge. Now, Chapter 13s are going to be on your credit for 7 years, but your credit is rebuilding while you're going through the process because none of the unsecured creditors or secured creditors can report negatively while you're in the Chapter 13 system. Now let's break down the difference between Chapter 7 and Chapter 13. There's a lot of confusion over this. So a Chapter 7 is a liquidation where, generally speaking, you become debt-free in about 3 to 4 months. In most cases, you don't pay any money back to your creditors. Chapter 13 is where you pay a portion of that debt over the 3 to 5 year period. Sometimes people choose Chapter 13 over Chapter 7 because they have assets they want to protect, because in a Chapter 7, assets can actually be taken away from you, unlike a Chapter 13. Also, in a Chapter 13, you have an absolute right to dismiss the case, meaning if you don't like the payment plan, if you hit the lottery and you can pay everything off, you can just get out of the Chapter 13. In a Chapter 7, once you're in, you actually have to ask permission from the court to get out of the Chapter 7. So it's a bigger commitment when you're in that 7. So you really want to take that seriously and know all the consequences before you get into that Chapter 7 liquidation scenario. Let's talk about things that you can't do after filing a Chapter 7. First off, if you successfully file a Chapter 7 and receive a discharge, you will not be able to file Chapter 7 and receive a discharge for another 8 years. So make sure that you have the right amount of debt and you're using it to your advantage, because you're not going to be able to file again for 8 years. Also, there are certain debts like recent tax debt, student loans, child support, other marital debt that will not be discharged. Believe it or not, if it's older tax debt, it may be discharged through a 7 or a 13 and just be general unsecured. I know most people think the IRS always gets paid, but actually in certain circumstances and in many circumstances, older tax debt is discharged through a Chapter 7 bankruptcy. Now, I get asked this question quite often: what's the minimum debt that I have to file Chapter 7? Really, there is no minimum debt. I recently had a case where somebody didn't really have any debt yet, but they were going to have debt, and they were in their early 20s. They were in a car accident. They didn't have proper insurance. It was their fault. The lawsuit was coming. They knew the lawsuit was going to end with a significant amount of debt, and their license was going to be suspended. So we actually filed their Chapter 7 bankruptcy where they had no actual debt. It was potential debt that they can get out of just by filing that bankruptcy. You actually don't have to wait until you get a judgment against you or until the debt actually hits your credit report to file the Chapter 7. So there is no minimum. What we look at is we look at your debt to income ratio. So if somebody has $10,000 worth of debt, but they make $100,000 a year and they really don't have any other commitments, they're maybe a single guy, single girl, then we're not going to recommend bankruptcy. We're going to talk about negotiating the debt, figuring out a budget, getting a way to pay that down. But if you have $10,000 worth of debt and you're living off of Social Security, which is $1,600 a month, then bankruptcy might be the right option for you. So it really depends on your exact circumstance. Don't let anybody tell you you don't have enough debt to file bankruptcy. Have a professional like me review your whole situation, and let's figure out what the best options are. Now, also a question I commonly get is, what disqualifies people from filing for bankruptcy? There are a few things out there that won't allow you to file certain bankruptcies. So let's start with a simple one. Some people cannot file Chapter 7 bankruptcy simply because they do not pass the means test. The means test is set by the median income of your state. It's updated a few times a year, and it looks at household size and household income. Generally speaking, if you are above that household size and household income for that household size, you are not going to be eligible for a Chapter 7, and that'll put you into a Chapter 13. There are certain exceptions to this, like if your debt is primarily business debt or non-consumer debt, there are ways around the CMI, and this is based off of your last 6 months worth of income and expenses. Also, if you're engaged in illegal activity, if you're gambling, if there's other things going on that you don't want the Department of Justice looking into, you probably shouldn't go into bankruptcy. I have quite a few clients that come in and they might be running different pyramid schemes or things that might be quasi-legal, let's just say, that you probably don't want to go into bankruptcy, because when you go into bankruptcy, you're going to have an independent trustee that's looking through everything, and you have to open up all your books and basically show the trustee, the Department of Justice, everything that you've been doing. So if you've been doing illegal things, probably don't go into bankruptcy. You want to look at speaking to a criminal attorney first to figure out how to rectify that. And yes, this includes all the people that have taken out those SBA loans and spent it on personal goods instead of what it was used for, because the SBA is looking through and doing an accounting of what you spent, especially the larger loans. So if you got a $500,000, million, $2 million loan, and you can't account for it, you probably don't want to go into bankruptcy, because they are going to look through all the transactions. Now, probably the number one question I get is, when I file bankruptcy, isn't that going to destroy my credit? Well, first off, if you're watching this video, if you're coming into my office, generally speaking, your credit probably has already taken a hit or is about to take a hit. So bankruptcy will actually help your credit in that scenario, because the only way that you can rebuild credit or make your credit better is by getting the negative off of your credit and then put positive marks back on the credit. So yes, if you file Chapter 7, your credit, generally speaking, will take a dip, but then it takes about 12 to 18 months to rebuild credit. Yes, you will be able to get credit cards again. You're going to get credit card offers as soon as you receive your discharge. There's actually credit card companies that buy the discharge list so that they can mail you an offer, because they know you cannot file bankruptcy for another 8 years. Yes, you will be able to get a car loan. Generally speaking, that's 6 to 12 months after filing. There are some lenders that will deal with you while going through the bankruptcy. We just had a meeting with one, shout out to 722 Redemption, that will offer you cars at a decent price. Also, the FHA says 24 months after you file bankruptcy, you can get an FHA mortgage. So it's not a life sentence. It's not 8 years, 10 years, 7 years. It's generally speaking a 12 to 24 month process to rebuild your credit. It will be on your credit for 10 years. Do not lie about about your bankruptcy filing, because it is public record. So if people do background checks on you, it will show up. I tell all my clients, if you're going to a job interview and you know they're going to pull your credit score, have your 30-second elevator speech of what happened. A lot of it is explainable. I got into an accident, COVID shut down my business. People can relate to it, and maybe that person interviewing you has actually filed bankruptcy and went through the same thing. So don't lie about it. Be honest. Have your 30-second speech, and I promise you your credit will rebuild. I hope you found this helpful.